Well, happy Sunday to everyone. I was asked to do a reflection on the Feast of the Epiphany, and I thought a good starting point would be some of the music that we use to commemorate the day. Uh, I think, like most people, I've always had a very special place in my heart for the music that we sing around Christmas, both the secular but also and the sacred. Both of those together, I think for all of us, has a very special kind of warmth to it. Uh, but one thing that I began to notice more and more over the past few years is that so many of the English carols that we sing, that kind of great treasury of classic English hymns that we sing during Mass. And, like everyone else, I always look forward to the opening of Mass when we sing O Come All Ye Faithful. Um, Beautiful, beautiful hymns, right? All of us know so many of them, but very few of them make very much of the idea of the kingship of Christ. And I began to notice this, especially as I started looking at some of the Gregorian chants and the Latin antiphons that are associated with Christmas. A lot of hymns will kind of mention Christ the King at some point, but when you look at the Psalms, the antiphons, and that kind of thing, it's like they hammer you over and over again with the idea of the kingship of Christ, who has come as a conqueror, the God who has come to reign, to crush all of his enemies and to kind of subdue all the nations under him and so on. And to my mind, it's a very beautiful juxtaposition because you have, on the one hand, this image in the antiphons and the Psalms of the conquering king, and then on the other hand, through the readings and through the kind of the commemoration of the day of Christmas, you have the baby Jesus. And so this kind of image of power and tenderness right next to each other is something which I think is really very beautiful. And I bring it up today on the Feast of the Epiphany because I think it frames the feast really in a way that allows us to understand what's going on a little bit more. Um, we have today a contrast given to us between the wise men and Herod. Of course, we know the famous story about the wise men who come from the east and they encounter Herod and so on, and and we see there are two reactions. Herod, on the one hand, of course, has a very cruel and brutal reaction in slaughtering all the children under two out of fear for the security of his own position as king of Israel, king of the Jewish people at least. And uh, and we recognize, with the benefit of hindsight and all that, we recognize that his reaction is not only cruel but really completely unnecessary. Um, and then the wise men, of course, come probably with great difficulty, with great personal expense, to pay homage to the child Jesus, to the infant Christ. Um, and it speaks volumes that essentially they put their life on hold, traveled to a distant land, and then just left something behind, gave him these costly gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and then left. They didn't, so far as we know, they didn't ask for anything, they didn't kind of demand anything in return. They simply went to pay homage to this king, this person, this king who had come to conquer and to subdue the world. And so for them, it was an initial act of surrender, of allegiance, of kind of recognizing the authority of the Christ child, uh, despite the fact that they found him probably in a poor house as a young child in kind of a small town outside the main city, the capital. So it's a very kind of powerful image that we're presented with. And I think that it challenges us to reflect on our own attitude on a feast like this, especially because the idea of paying homage is a very foreign idea to us. Here in North America, we're kind of raised on a very steady diet of democratic ideas and so on, and so we grew up with a very strong understanding that all men are created equal, that every man and woman is kind of sovereign over his or her life, and it's not to kind of diminish any of these ideas. They certainly have their place in organizing what's all things considered a very stable society. But perhaps we miss out because of that on the obligation that we have to pay homage to God, not simply because we hope to gain anything in return, not because of some kind of hidden selfish motive, but simply because God is the King. He is the great authority, and He deserves our homage. He deserves our respect. He deserves the same kind of generosity on our part, which we see in the wise men today. And so perhaps, perhaps some of us already have a way where we kind of work this out in our life, where we do pay homage to God. Uh, but perhaps it's also kind of worth thinking about areas, especially in the year ahead, where we can do this a little bit more. Perhaps, like the wise men, through some kind of act of generosity, material generosity. Perhaps simply through a kind of a greater attention to prayer, a greater attention to going to mass regularly and so on, even on days when we don't have to. Uh, Not because of what we hope to gain out of it, not because we kind of hope to be in God's good books and therefore gains certain extra blessings, but simply to recognize with the wise men today who God is and what we owe Him on account of who He is. This is the beauty of their act, and it's something that we can think about today and try to imitate in our own lives, to pay homage to this new King who has come to conquer, not financially, not in a territorial sense, but who has come to conquer our hearts. And so we offer something from that space, something from within our own heart to God, out of reverence, out of love, as an act of homage to the newborn Christ child.